Go ahead, Sheikh. What was you saying?
On this thing, he just read this thing and it said, it says, wives accompanied by their husband must submit a copy of their marriage certificates. So I know you're not agree. But I remember when I went, and my wife was 15, we didn't have to, but our last name is the same. So
That was for Hajj or Umrah?
Umrah.
I don't know.
That's for Hajj.
I don't know.
Okay. It is that.
Allah.
You got the board after this?
No. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم الحكيم اللهم اجعل هذه المحاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين أما بعد. This is our first class in the chapter. We continue in the book of Salat, or Kitab al-Salat. This is our chapter, Bab al-Salat al-Tatawwu'i wa Awqat al-Nahi. This chapter deals with different types of voluntary prayers and the times in which the Salah is prohibited to pray in. This chapter is quite extensive. However, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to, inshallah, finish it this evening. Now, we're going to mention different aspects of voluntary prayers. We'll get into more detail as we actually cover that. So right now, this is a general look at it, and then it's going to be more specific in certain other chapters. Right. Qala Musannaf rahimahullah. In this book, once again, the book is Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni. There's a book that's been translated. I think it's definitely translated now. The metin or the text of this book, Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni, I think it's translated. I think there's another book. It's called Al-Thamaraat from Sheikh Salat al-Fawzan. That's also translated. It's similar to this, perhaps it's slightly more detailed. I think that's in 2 volumes in English. 2 volumes. Huh? Right now? It's 2 volumes. And I think the text, Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni, I think it is translated. At any event, this book was put together by Abu Musa al-Hajjawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. And in this text, it's a summarized, Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni is a summarized book from a more extensive book called Al-Muqni' the Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, rahimahullah ta'ala. At any event, the Shaykh, rahimahullah, he starts off by saying, Bab al-Salat al-Tatawwu'i wa Awqat al-Nahi, the book or the chapter dealing with voluntary prayers and the prohibited times for prayer. So he says, Akiduha kusufun. So first, before we get into the text, the scholar, the Shaykh, he's talking about the voluntary prayers. But when he starts off talking about the voluntary prayers, he's talking about the ones that are in congregation, and then he's going to move on to ones that are not in congregation. So here, the first one he says, Akiduha or Akiduha kusuf. Salatul kusuf. Is anyone familiar with Salatul kusuf? Have you heard of it before? If you haven't heard of it, we're going to talk about that in more details in another chapter. In general, Salatul kusuf is when there's an eclipse. Alright? And there's a particular way that this prayer is performed, and it is performed in congregation. It's performed in congregation, huh? Okay. Thumma istisqa. Another type of voluntary prayer is called Salatul Istisqa. Now, we're going to get into detail how to pray these prayers in their respective chapters. However, right now we're just speaking in general about them. Salatul Istisqa is the salat that a person prays when they are seeking for rain. Salat al-Istisqa. You want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide His nourishment or His layth, the rain, beneficial rain to the land or the region. And then after that he says, Thumma Tarawih. Tarawih. Is anyone familiar with Tarawih? Huh? What is Tarawih? Ahsant. It's the Sunnah prayer that is prayed in the month of Ramadan. It's the prayer that is prayed in Ramadan. And then after that, he says that, Witrun yuf'alu bayna isha thumma witrun. And then after that, now he's mentioned something that can be done in congregation or can be done by themselves, or by a person can do that individually. And it's called Salatul Witr. Does anyone know what Salatul Witr is?
Yes.
What is Salatul Witr?
Salatul Witr is the prayer that's done after Isha, before Fajr.
Salatul Witr is done after Isha, before Fajr?
Yes.
What does it mean, Salatul Witr? One. So in general, if a person prays Salatul Witr, it is a salat that is prayed individually by themselves. It says, Rawan an Imam Ahmed. Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, he uses this Salatul Witr to determine whether a person is reliable or not. So Imam Ahmed, he says, "Man taraka al-witru amdan fahuwa rajulun su la yanbaghi an tuqbala lahu shahada wa laysa biwajib." All right, this is important. Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, he died in the year 241 Hijri, and this shows the level or the religion of the scholars of the past. Now, Salatul Witr is a salat that is recommended. It's not something that is obligatory, right? But what did he say about the one who leaves it off? Imam Ahmed, he said, "Man taraka witra." Whoever leaves Salatul Witr amdan, intentionally, fahuwa rajulun su. La tuqbal lahu shahada. Wa la yanbaghi an tuqbal lahu shahada. He said, whoever leaves this prayer off is an evil person. And his narrations or his speech should not be accepted. Now, he's talking about leaving off a voluntary prayer, not something that is obligatory, because it's not wajib. It's not obligatory to pray Salatul Witr. However, this shows the importance that he puts on it. In fact, I have some notes here from one of the mashayikh. He said, "Qad yakun indahu fisq alladhi yamna'hu min as-salat." Is a person that leaves off Salatul Witr, it could be due to some sins that they commit that will allow them to leave off the sunnah prayers. Allah knows best. It could be the sins if a person commits sins in general, it could push a person away from fulfilling voluntary prayers. Alright? We're assuming that the person is doing all of their obligatory prayers. Anything extra, they may not actually do it. They may actually leave it off. Allah knows best. However, this is a statement that many scholars talk about, the one who leaves off Salatul Witr, that their statement should not be accepted. Obviously, this is the position of Imam Ahmed with regards to this. There's a lot of kalam, if you will, or speech about it. At any event, Imam Hajjawi, he says, "Thumma witrun yuf'alu bayna al-isha'i wal-fajr." So Salatul Witr is performed between Salatul or after Salatul Isha, before Salatul Fajr, and it's one rak'ah. And we're going to talk about that, inshallah, in some more detail. فَوَقْتُهُ. So then he says, وَأَقَلَّهُ رَكْعَةٌ. The shortest form, or the shortest form of Salatul Witr is one rak'ah. So for example, if a person prays after Salatul Isha, they say, you know what, I'm going to pray Witr now before I go to sleep. One rak'ah, it will be sufficient for Salatul Witr. And Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam, he said, "Al-witru rak'atun min akhir al-layl." He says, Al-witru, meaning Salatul Witr, is the minimum of one rak'ah min akhir al-layl, in the last part of the night. And then he says, وَأَكْثَرُهُ, and Imam Hajjawi, He says, وَأَكْثَرُهُ, the most a person can pray for Salatul Witr. Pay attention. The most a person can pray for Salatul Witr. أَكْثَرُهُ إِحْدَى عَشَرَ مَثْنَى مَثْنَى. The most a person can pray for Salatul Witr is إِثْنَى عَشَرَ or إِحْدَى عَشَرَ. 11 raka'at for Salatul Witr. Mathna, mathna. Mathna, mathna, it means a person prays. So say, for example, a person may be going through something in their life. Right? We know a du'a'ul ibadah. Making dua is a form of worship. So, as Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us avenues to get closer to Him. He gives us avenues that can rectify problems that we're having in our lives. We have different cures or different things that will aid us, that Allah introduces or Allah gives us in our religion. And from those things is Salatul Layl, praying in the last part of the night, praying Salatul Witr in the last part of the night to the end of it. And so we know that if a person is going through something in their life, it may be better for them if they can to get up in the last part of the night and call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we have in an authentic hadith, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to the lowest levels of the heavens looking for slaves in the last third of the night so that He can answer their dua. So what about the one that's going through something in their life and they get up in the last third? So here, it says, Mathna, mathna. Mathna, mathna, it means they pray 2 rak'at. They make taslim, they get up and pray 2 rak'at, make taslim, 2 rak'at, make taslim, 2 rak'at, make taslim, and then 1 rak'at to make it witr. So that the most a person can pray for Salatul Witr is 11. Is how many? 11. Any questions about that?
What would be the difference between the 11 rak'ats and the 1 and the significance that we do during Ramadan?
So, and so we're going to talk about that. In Taraweeh, usually that prayer is called Salatul Taraweeh. And at the end of Salatul Taraweeh, they pray witr. But the witr that is prayed at the end of Taraweeh is 3 rak'at. 3. So all those salawat that you pray before that is all considered Salatul Taraweeh. And then after that, usually they will pray 3 rak'at for Salatul Witr. We're saying here, the lowest number or the least amount of rak'ats a person can do for Salatul Witr is 1. And the maximum amount is 11. It says, وَيُوتِرُ بِوَاحِدَةٍ وَإِنْ أَوْتَرَ بِخَمْسٍ أَوْ سَبْعٍ لَمْ يَجْلِسْ إِلَّا فِي آخِرِهَا. So then they're going to mention different ways to actually pray Salatul Witr. So a person may say, well, Islam has all these different avenues. This is a ni'mah, this is a blessing from Allah, that Allah gives us many different avenues to get closer to Him. Right? So here it says, وَيُوتِرُ بِوَاحِدَةٍ. A person can make witr with 1 rak'ah. وَإِنْ أَوْتَرَ بِخَمْسٍ. Let's say a person prayed 5 rak'ah for Salatul Witr. A person can literally pray 1 rak'ah, 2 rak'ah, without making taslim, okay? 1 rak'ah, 2 rak'ah, 3, 4, sit for the 4th one, make the shahud, stand up, and make 1 more, and that would be his Salatul Witr. These are different ways it can be performed. Well then?
No.
Alright. So it says here, وَأَوْتَرَ بِخَمْسٍ أَوْ سَبْعٍ لَمْ يَجْلِسْ إِلَّا فِي آخِرِهَا. Alright. I just gave one example. I'm going to give you the example he mentions here. A person can pray 5 raka'at straight. In the last raka'at, he makes it the tashahhud and gives taslim. Have you ever seen that before?
The last one?
What I'm saying, is it clear or not? So praying Salatul Witr, there are different ways a person can pray. Alright? If a person wanted to pray 5 raka'at, remember the smallest number is 1 and the most is 11, but it has to be an odd number. Alright? So the Shaykh Rahimahullah, he says that a person can pray, for example, a person can pray 5 raka'at straight. And at the last raka'ah, he makes tashahhud and he makes taslim.
That's on the fifth
On
one.
the fifth one. Or he can do 7, or he or she can do 7 and do it on the last one. Right? وَلَمْ يَجْلَسْ إِلَّا فِي آخِرِهَا. And they don't sit the last for the second or the last one. It says, كَانَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ يُوتِرُ بِسَبْعٍ وَبِخَمْسٍ وَلَا يَفْصِلُ بَيْنَهُنَّ بِالسَّلَامِ وَلَا كَلَامٍ رواه أحمد ومسلم. In authentic hadith that we find in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ, he would pray 7 raka'at, he would pray 5 raka'at or 7 raka'at, and he would not put any type of break between them except for the taslim at the end, or the taslim at the end, and there would be no talking. And then the Shaykh Rahimahullah, he mentions, وَبِتِسْءٍ يَجْلِسُ عَقِبَ ثَامِنًا. And then he gives, so right now the first thing he mentions is, this is according to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. If a person wanted to pray 5 raka'at for witr, then they can pray 5 raka'at, and for the last one, they can do the tashahhud and the taslim. If they wanted to do 7, then they can pray 7 straight, and with the last one, the 7th raka'at, do the tashahhud and the taslim. Is that clear? Now,
you saying like on the 5th one, you ain't saying do 6, you saying do 4 and then 1.
No, I'm saying do 5 and sitting on the last one.
And then taslim out?
You can taslim out.
After the 5th one.
Mm-hmm.
And
that could be your witr.
And you do 9 too, right?
We didn't get to 9 yet. Right now, I'm giving you a hadith pertaining to 5, 7, and then we're going to move to 9. Any questions about that? No. Follow.
Now, the first time you mentioned 4.
Yes, leave that. Because we're talking about this right now. That's why I said, we're going to use the examples in the book. I don't want to confuse anyone. So we're going to use the examples in the book. When I meant 5 raka'at, the last raka'at, you sit, make tashahhud and taslim. If it's 7 raka'at, you can sit for the last one, make tashahhud and taslim. Is that clear? Like, does sisters have any questions about that? You want to ask them?
Sisters have any questions?
Yes.
Fine.
Salam. So in regards to what you just said, you would only make the tashahhud on the last rakat. So you would make the intentions for the tashahhud to be the pillar tashahhud and not the wajib. Remember when we discussed that?
Right. So this here, we're talking about the sunnah prayers, right? So if you're, that's a good question. Allah, turn your mic off, man, so they stop asking questions. That tashahhud would be tashahhud al-akhir. Remember what we said. The first tashahhud is the tashahhud that is from the wajibat, right? Are you with me, sister? Alright, so the first tashahhud is the tashahhud for the wajibat. The last tashahhud in the salat is the one that is a pillar. Remember we said tashahhud al-akhir, meaning the last one is from the pillars of the salat, not the one before. So, based on your question, if we're doing 5 raka'at for salatul witr, if we're only doing 1 tashahhud at the end, then that tashahhud would be what?
Wajib.
No, it wouldn't be wajib. It would be the pillar. It would be the pillar.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So
Right.
you would make your intention
Yes.
for it to be for the
That would be for the pillar. Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Like, so then the Shaykh Rahimahullah says, وَبِتِسْعٍ يَجْلِسُ عَقِبَ الثَّامِنَةِ. He says, now if a person is going to pray 9 raka'at, then how should he do that? And so the Shaykh Rahimahullah, he said, now mind you, all of this is according to the fiqh of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So, oh brother, I read somewhere else. We're just telling you what Imam Ahmad's fiqh is with regards to this. وَبِتِسْءٍ يَجْلِسُ عَقِبَ الثَّامِنَةِ. So with 9 raka'at, they would sit for the 8th one. Pay attention, there's the difference between 5 and 7. If you're going to pray 9 straight raka'at for salatul witr, for the 8th raka'at, you can sit for that. As he says, وَبِتِسْءٍ يَجْلِسُ عَقِبَ الثَّامِنَةِ وَيَتَشَهَّدُ وَلَا يُسَلِّمُ ثُمَّ يُصَلِّيَ التَّاسِعَةِ. وَيَتَّشَهَدْ وَيُسَلِّمْ. So he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says a person should sit for the 8th one, do the tashahhud al-awwal, the first tashahhud. And then they're going to stand up and pray the last raka'ah, which would be the 9th raka'ah. And then they would make tashahhud, and then they would make taslim. Is that clear? Again? Say it again?
No.
Or is that clear?
Repeat.
All right. So if we have wabitis and yajlisu, if a person is praying, let's say for example, a person wants to pray 9 raka'at for Salatul Witr. Okay? That person can pray 8 raka'at straight without any breaks. 8 of them. And then for the 8th aqib raka'at al-thamina, at the end of the 8th raka'at, they will sit, make tashahhud, the first tashahhud, that is from the wajibat of the salah. They'll make tashahhud, tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu, to the end of it. And then they will stand up and do the last final raka'ah. Okay? They will do the final raka'ah, and then they would sit again, make tashahhud al-akhir, the last tashahhud, and then they will make taslim. This is the way that a person can do Salatul Witr if you're going to pray 9 raka'ah. Remember, we said that the least amount a person can do for Salatul Witr is 1. The least amount is 1. And the maximum is 11. The least amount is 1 and the maximum is 11. Now,
It's all based on straight.
straight, right. Okay? And this is for Salatul Witr.
I have one question.
Uh-huh.
When you're doing the 1, do you do Salat Ibrahim and Tashahhud, or how would you do the 1? You never explained how to do the 1.
How we do the 1 what?
The 1 rakat for the Witr.
How we do the 1 raka'ah for the Witr. So if you're going to do the 1 raka'ah for the Witr, that 1 raka'ah, you talking about the tashahhud, right? Remember, it's tashahhud al-akhir, the last tashahhud.
But when you do the Ibrahim before
You have to. If not, then you have no salah. Right? So when we're doing now, we did a class on the tashahhud, right? So you have the tahiyyat, then you have the salat al-Ibrahim. For the first tashahhud, you don't have to do the salat al-Ibrahim. That's in the last one. Right? So you know that if you're doing the last one, then you're going to also, you have to do, right? Like, all right. Somebody asked a question, do you recite another surah after Al-Fatiha? Yes, you can recite another surah after Al-Fatiha. And we're going to talk about that too, inshallah ta'ala. وَأَدْنَى كَمَا ثَلَاثًا. And they say, وَأَدْنَى كَمَا, the lowest number, or the... So if a person prays 1 raka'ah, this is not considered a complete tashahhud, but it's something that is considered yujzi, meaning it is sufficient, but it's not the best. The least amount that is considered complete is 3 raka'at. A person should do at least 3, but you can suffice with just 1. You should do at least 3, but you can suffice with just 1. It says, وَأَدْنَى الْكَمَالِ ثَلَاثُ رَكَعَاتٍ بِسَلَامَيْنِ يَقْرَعُ فِي الْأُولَى بِسَبِّحْ. All right. So the best...
Before you go forward,
Yes.
you say 3, if they're doing a 3, did you ever explain that last week, or
Doing a 3 what?
you didn't explain what you was doing the 3 rakats for the witr instead of the 1? Is it a different variation of doing it, or are we...
Yeah, we can ready to do it right now. You're explaining right now.
Okay.
Right now. So the Shaykh Rahimahullah Ta'ala, he says, if a person wants to do the 3 raka'at for Salatul Witr, بسلامين يقرأ في الأولى سبح وفي الثانية قل يا أيها الكافرون وفي الثالثة بالإخلاص. The Shaykh Rahimahullah Ta'ala, he says that if a person wants to do the 3 raka'at for Salatul Witr, the best way to do it, I'm not saying it's the only way, but the best way to do it is you start off with reciting Al-Fatiha, Sabbih Isma Rabbika Al-A'la, the second surah, Al-Fatiha, Qul Ya Ayyuhal Kafirun, and you make taslim. You do your tashahhud, You say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And then you stand up and do your last raka'ah in Surah Al-Ikhlas. Al-Fatiha, Surah Al-Ikhlas. And you do your tashahhud again. This will be tashahhud al-akhir, just like the last one was when you separate it. And you make taslim, and that would be your salatul witr. Well, there, is that clear?
No, repeat that. You lost. You went from you said the best way is to start without Fatiha.
Not the best way. I mean,
No, I'm just saying. No,
that's what I said. All right, let me fix that. You start with Al-Fatiha. You have to say Al-Fatiha.
Yeah,
All right.
You said the best way is you start with Al-Fatiha, and then saying you just went straight to going straight through. You didn't say if you break on the second one to do the test.
All right, so let me say it again.
Okay.
Maybe my mind is moving faster than what I'm saying. All right. So if we're doing 3 rak'ats, right? The first rak'at, we're going to recite Al-Fatiha wa Surah. Surah Sabbih Hisbi Rabbikal A'la, for example. All right? Then the second rak'at, we're going to recite Al-Fatiha and then Surah Al-Kafirun. Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun. And then we're going to do Tashahhud Al-Akhir, the last Tashahhud, and then we're going to make Taslim. That's after how many rak'at? 2. And then you're going to stand up for the third one. For the third rak'ah, you're going to recite Al-Fatiha and then Surah Al-Ikhlas. And then after that, you're going to do Tashahhud Al-Akhir. And then you're going to make Taslim, and that is, as the ulama mentioned, this is the more complete form of Salatul Witr.
So is that only the case with when you're doing 3?
So there are many different ways to do them. These are just examples that I mentioned. Right? It doesn't lock you in on you have to do it this way. In these issues, Amrul Wasir, as many of the ulama mentioned, Amrul Wasir. This affair is wide, but these are the ways that many of the scholars discuss that are easy for most people. And it's something that is known. We have narrations to support all of this. Inshallah ta'ala. So are we clear on witr?
Yeah.
All right. So the next part we're going to discuss here is Salatul Qunut. Does anyone know what Salatul Qunut is? Or the Dua Qunut, rather. Not the Salatul Qunut, but the Qunut in the Salat. Is anyone familiar with that? A Qunut is a form of dua that a person makes in the Salat. Usually people see this done in Ramadan. During the Witr prayer, you might see the Imam put his hands up and people say, Ameen, Ameen. Right. This is called the Qunut. Right? When is the Qunut legislated in Islam? We're going to discuss that now. And the Shaykh Rahimahullah Ta'ala, he says, وَيَقْنَدُ فِيهَا بَعْدَ الرُّكُوعِ وَيَقُولُ. So if a person in Salatul Tarawih, a person is going to do the Qunut in the last rak'ah in general. The person is going to do it in the last rak'ah for thalitha ba'da ruku' nadman. So if a person is doing 3 rak'ah, like we just mentioned, in the last rak'ah, when they come up from ruku', Sami Allahu liman hamida, wa rabbana wa lakal hamd, after that, and they will raise their hands. And the dua, Allahumma hdini fi man hadayt, wa afini fi man afayt, wa tawallani fi man tawallayt, wa barik li fi man a'tayt, wa qini sharra ma qadayt, to the end of the dua. There's a dua, this is the dua that the Imam says when he is leading the salat for Salatul Tarawih, perhaps, or Salatul Witr. This is the dua that is usually made. At the end of it, at the end of this dua, there are some positions that some of the scholars use. This is the end of the Qunut. This is the end of the Qunut. And it says, at the end of it, وَيَمْسَحُ وَجْهَهُ بِيَدَيْنِ. And so there are 2 positions of Imam Ahmed on this. After they finish, you ever see people just wipe their faces? Right. So there are 2 positions. Some of the Salaf, some of the scholars of the past hold the position that it is permissible to wipe their face in that sense at the end of the Qunut. And some of them say, la, don't wipe your face at the end of the Qunut. If you want more detail on it, this will take a whole nother class and talk about the different adillah and how they use it and what they yurajjih kada wa kada. They say this is the strongest based on this and so on. We're not going to get into that. All right? So the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, then he says, وَيُكْرَهْ قُنُوتَهُ فِي غَيْرِ الْوِتْرِ إِلَّا أَن تَنْزِلَ بِالْمُسْلِمِينَ نَازِلَ غَيْرِ الطَّاعُونَ. Alright, so can an imam do the qunut outside of Ramadan? Have any of you ever seen an imam of a masjid do the qunut outside of Ramadan? Yeah, for Fajr. Have you ever seen this? Where? Was there anything going on at that time? Huh? Right. So here it says it is hated for a person to do the qunut fi ghayri witri. It's hated for a person to do the qunut outside of Salatul Witr. So for example, Salatul Fajr, that's not Witr, right? We're praying Salatul Fajr. It's hated to do the qunut outside of that time, meaning the Salatul Witr time, unless there is a nazila, like some type of hardship, oppression that has happened to the Muslims at that particular state of time. So if there's a hardship, nazila, ghayr, any type of hardship that plagues the Muslims outside of some type of plague, like some type of famine or something, like a plague, they say, like a disease that's spread.
So it wouldn't have been like the war in Iraq?
It could be. It could be. Yeah, it could be. It could be a war. It could be any type of harm that's coming to the Muslims. فَيَقْنُدُ الْإِمَامِ فِي الْفَرَائِدِ. In this case, the imam can do the qunut in the obligatory prayers. But when they say imam here, they're not talking about the imam of the masjid. Rather, they're talking about wali al-amr, meaning the Muslim leaders, if you will. The Muslim leaders in particular countries. So for example, when we were in Saudi, in Mecca, if something was going on, like this type of situation, perhaps it would be like a government thing. So, okay, we need the imams of the masjid, the masajid to do Salat al-Qunut, for example. So then the imams of masajid around would actually do that. The imams of the masajid. But when they say imam, if anyone has this text here, when they say imam here in the text, they're not talking about a'immatul masajid, meaning the imams of the masjid. They're not talking about them. They're talking about wali al-amr, the people that are in charge of the affairs. So in Islam, when the term imam is used, they're not talking about imams of masjids. They're talking about imams, meaning the leaders, the rulers over the Muslims at that particular time. But the next issue is Salatul Tarawih. How many times do we hear about Salatul Tarawih? It says, "Wa Tarawih ashruna raka'ah." So according to the school of Imam Ahmed, they say that Salatul Tarawih should be prayed with 20 raka'ah. 20. Is that correct? Is that according to the Sunnah?
11.
You say no, it's 11.
I'm not saying.
No, listen.
I've heard.
Go by what you know, Sheikh. Don't back up now.
I ain't backing up.
Listen, man, stand your ground.
I heard both.
You heard both.
I've heard overseas they do 20, but here we do 11.
Based on what?
Sunnah, but I know it's 11.
The Sunnah is 11. Mashallah. So whoever does 20 don't follow Sunnah.
I'm not saying anything. I know.
So what are you saying?
I said I don't know.
I mean, well, what are you saying?
I said what I said.
Oh, okay. What about you? Is that Sunnah Bid'ah, 20 rak'ah? It's a Bid'ah. It's not a Bid'ah. Is it a Bid'ah? What's a Bid'ah anyway?
Innovation.
Bid'ah means what's the innovation?
Something that's implemented or put into the religion that is not from
When a person is using that to get closer to Allah. They're introducing something into the religion and they're using it to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So, is anyone familiar with 20 rak'ah for Salatul Tarawih or no? Shaking the back. Huh? No? Right. So, according to the school of Imam Ahmed, they say that for Salatul Tarawih, it should be 20 rak'ah. تُفْعَلُ فِي جَمَاعَةٍ مَعَ وِتْرٍ بَعْدَ إِشَاء فِي Ramadan. So they say that for Salat al-Tarawih, it should be 20 rak'ah. And it should be done in congregation with the witr prayer after Salat al-Isha in the month of Ramadan. So I knew that this issue is an issue that people, oh, wait a minute, brother, I read it's 11, and that's what it is. That's the sunnah. So the question is, what is the sunnah? What does that mean? If someone says something is the sunnah, does anyone know what the definition of sunnah is?
The ways of the Prophet.
The ways of the Prophet. That's it? That's your homework. The homework, we have sunnah. What's the definition of sunnah? I want the legislative, the shari'i definition of sunnah. So that way, when we say something is sunnah, we know what it means. There's a lot of people that run around, brother, you're not following the sunnah. What's sunnah? What does that mean? Sunnah. Everyone says sunnah, sunnah. We want to follow the sunnah. What's sunnah? What does sunnah mean? Somehow, oh, it's just a hadith. Which hadith? Huh? What are we talking about?
You said the legislative meaning for that?
Yeah, what's the legislative meaning of sunnah? What does it mean? Okay? Right. So here, we're going to read some of the speech of some of our earlier scholars in Islam about 20 rak'ahs. Because I knew this was an issue, so I said, okay, one of the ways we can deal with this is let's read what the scholars of the past had to say about praying 20 rak'ah. And understand something else too. It's difficult to say something is an innovation when we have companions and the students of the companions, and none of them said it was an innovation. So is it possible for us to come in 2018 and say something's an innovation in a religion when the companions of the Prophet ﷺ and their students didn't say it was innovation? Does that make sense? No. So we have وَعَدَدُهَا عَشْرُونَ رَكْعَةً. So here it says in Al-Mustaq'ni وَعَدَدُهَا عَشْرُونَ رَكْعَةً. They said the number of the raka'at in Tarawih is 20. Well, who says this? قال به سفيان الثوري رحمه الله تعالى وأبو حنيفة وإمام الشافعي وقال مالك. Now, the dispute among the Salaf is not whether or not 20 raka'at is a bid'ah or not. The dispute amongst them is only 20. Some did 40. Some did 30. As we're going to find out. It says, وقال إمام مالك ست وثلاثون. Imam Malik, he says, no, it's supposed to be 36. وزعم أنه أمر القديم وتعلق بفعل أهل المدينة. And this was the actions of the people of Medina. فإن صالحا مولى توأمة قال أدركت الناس يقومون ب41 ركعة. And there's another narration by a person named Salih. Some of them say this person is weak. His narration is weak. At any event, he said, I met some of the people and they would do 41 rak'ah. يُوتِرُونَ مِنْهَا بِخَمْسٍ. And they would make witr from the 41 rak'ah to 5 rak'ahs. This is then Ramadan. And then he says, وَلَنَا, as for us, أَنَّ عُمْرَ. He says, as for us, we have Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu لَمَّا جَمَعَ النَّاسِ عَلَى أُبَيْ ibn Ka'b. So Umar ibn Khattab, he gathered the Muslims around Ubay ibn Ka'b from the Sahaba. He gathered all of the Muslims around him, the Sahaba during that time. فَكَانَ يُصَلِّي بِهِمْ 20 رَكَعَةً. And he would pray with them 20 rak'ahs. He would pray with them 20 rak'ahs. وَرَوَى السَّائِبْ ibn Yazid نَحْوُ. وَرَوَى مَالِكْ مِثْلَ ذَلك. Imam Malik also said the same thing. He also has another narration. ويزيد بن روحان قال كان الناس يقومون في زعم عمر بن الخطاب في رمضان ب23 ركعة. He said during the time of Umar, they would also stand and pray 23 rak'ah. وعن أبي عبد الرحمن السلمي عن علي رضي الله تعالى عنه أنه أمر رجلا يصلي بهم في رمضان 20 ركعة. And during the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he gathered the people around and commanded them to pray with them 20 rak'ah. And then he says, وَهَذَا كَالْإِجْمَعِ. Now the shahid, or the strongest point here, is he said, this is almost like ijma', meaning a scholarly consensus from the Sahaba. Close to. Not that it is, كَأَنَّهُ إِجْمَعِ, كَالْإِجْمَعِ. It's like ijma'. Now, so the question now is, the person says, all right, well, you didn't mention the Prophet ﷺ said. Right, that's just coming, right? I already know, that's why I had to prepare for that. So, ijma' of the companions is a ruling. Well, what that means is, if the companions of the Prophet ﷺ agreed to do something, and we don't find anyone opposing that, saying this is incorrect, the correct way is this, during their time, then it's as if this is an ijma'. Like they mentioned here, كَأَنَّهُ إِجْمَعِ, as if it's a scholarly consensus. And that's very, very strong. Very strong. This is why you don't find any of the scholars of the past, in general, from the earlier generations, saying that this was an act that is considered a bid'ah. Now,
I'm not sure if you was going to get to this, but it's almost ijma'. It's not quite ijma'. So it's...
There's some wiggle room there. But the point is, we don't find any prohibition to that. Right? So when you have Umar ibn Khattab, Ali ibn Abi Talib, these from the Khulafa Rashidin. These were the practices that they did. And you don't find any of the companions opposing them, saying this is incorrect. So the question would be, how in 2018 we're going to say this is incorrect when the companions didn't say it was incorrect? Do we have knowledge that came to us that didn't come to them? Does that make sense? And these are old issues. These are old issues. Now, the companions, they came to... Now, I'm not saying that if you only pray 11 rak'ah, that's wrong. I'm not saying that. The issue here is defending the issue of those who pray 20. Right? They have companions that did that. They have companions that did that. So somebody might say to you, well, somebody that might have studied Islam will say, well, brother, the action of a companion is not a proof. The action of one companion is not a proof in Islam. That's an argument. So the response to that would be, well, you have a group of companions that did it and no one made inkar. No one said this is incorrect. So then that is very strong evidence. That's very strong evidence in Islam. Well then, is that clear or not? Any questions about that?
So that's the definition of ijma'.
It's a very limited definition. Basically, you have a asr min usul, a time from different time periods where scholars come together and agree on an issue, and they don't oppose it. They all agree on a particular issue. This is a real synopsis, real general explanation of a definition. However, many scholars say that the only consensus of scholars is only during the time of the companions. Meaning, they will tell you nowadays it is impossible to have a scholarly consensus on the issue. Why is that? Why is it almost impossible today to have a scholarly consensus on the issue? Does anyone know why?
Depending on how it's brought to them.
No. It's almost impossible because it's mustahil. Because what you have to do is every scholar in the world will have to agree on this particular issue. And this is why it's difficult, almost impossible to get an ijma' today. Whereas during the time of the Sahaba, that was more realistic to be able to get an ijma' on a particular issue. Right? So there are different ways you can have ijma'. You can have ijma' by everyone concurring. And then we have something else called ijma' sukuti. And this means that the scholars agree on an issue. Let's say, for example, there's 20 of us in here. 15 agree on the issue and the other 5 didn't say anything, for or against, right? The fact that they didn't say anything against it would also count as a consensus because this would be considered ijma' sukuti, meaning silence here is approval. So there are many different ways to look at it. Perhaps maybe we can get into a class about different type of rulings of that in Islam, so that it will become a little more clear, inshallah.
No. Even if we have the consensus of the scholars, but Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did something different, how would that go into play? Or said something different?
Well, so then, if the Prophet ﷺ says something different and you have a consensus against something that the Prophet ﷺ did, is that what you're saying? Like, say, for example, the Messenger of Allah said, go this way. And then we find a consensus among the scholars that went that way. Right? All right. So, issue like this has to be looked at from many different angles. Number one, in a situation like that, first thing is that, as Muslims, our job is to have good thoughts of the companions, right? Our job as Muslims is to have good thoughts of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. That's number one. Number two, if the companions went this way and they all agreed to go that way, it could be that that hadith from the Prophet ﷺ may not be authentic, number one. Number two, that ruling could be abrogated, meaning that could have been a ruling they followed before, but then they changed it during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and that consensus shows that that ruling was changed, right? So there are many different ways that you can look at those issues, and I'm saying this without actually having real evidence in front of us. But inshallah ta'ala, as we continue, I think in Ramadan, inshallah, we're going to cover some hadith that were abrogated and were changed in one different ways, and you'll see how the companions dealt with that. And that's one of the beauties of studying Islam, is that you get to see this stuff. It's not تَهَجِّدُ بَعْدَهُ فَإِنْ تَبِيَ إِمَامَهُ شَفَعَهُ بِرَكْعَةٍ. So, let's say, for example, we're still talking about praying during Taraweeh, in Ramadan and Taraweeh, right? It says, if a person wanted to pray Tahajjud after Taraweeh, are you with me? So a person prays Taraweeh with the Imam, but then they don't want to pray, now they want to get up and pray Tahajjud. So, let's say the Imam's praying 20 raka'at, and then he's praying 3 raka'at for Salat al-Witr. So for that third raka'at, when everyone makes taslim, he's going to stand and do another raka'at. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, make your last salat of the night witr, meaning your very last prayer for the night, 1 raka'at. So let's look at this. Let's look at the picture here. Let's say it's in Ramadan, right after Ramadan, after an hour after Taraweeh, or after Taraweeh, the brothers or sisters, they're praying Taraweeh. At the end of Taraweeh, they're standing for Salat al-Witr. How many rak'at do they pray witr in Ramadan? 3. So they're praying the 3 rak'at. So when they stand for the last one, or when the Imam is saying, get ready to give the salams, they're going to stand up again and pray an additional rak'ah. Why? Because they want to get up again in the night to pray some more. Is that clear? So let's assume a person wanted to pray some more after Taraweeh. What if you wanted to pray again after you make witr? Perhaps witr is over at, Taraweeh and witr is over at 10:30, for example. So you go home, man, I want to pray some more. But you can't pray in general because you already prayed your witr. So if you plan on getting up to pray again, then you get up and you pray an extra rak'ah with the imam and the masjid, and then you can go home and pray some more. Well then, because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, make the last salat of the night witr. So if you would have prayed the witr with the imam, that means you were not intending on getting up and praying again. Is that clear? Or did I lose you?
So would that be as the imam goes into taslim, then you stand up
and
you offer another?
And you pray another rak'ah. Nah. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Ij'alu akhira salatikum bil-layl witra. This hadith you can find in Bukhari and Muslim. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, make your last salat of the night witra. Make your last salat of the night salat al-witr. Is that clear?
So in total that would be?
In total that would be
24 or?
It depends on how many you pray. No. Pay attention. We're talking about 2 different salawats.
No, but you mentioned if you pray Taraweeh and then they want to pray witr.
So this is what you could do. They pray Taraweeh at 20 rak'ah, you can stop there. Then when they want to pray witr, you can pray the 3 with them. You would have already prayed witr. That would have been your 23. That extra rak'ah would have been an even number so that you didn't pray witr because you wanted to pray later.
So do you test them out?
Do you test them out when?
Without, like, when you want to pray later, right?
No, you don't taslim out. You stand up for the extra rak'ah, and then you make tashahhud, and you make taslim later.
Making it an even number.
Making it an even number.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
So you saying, that, okay, you do the 3. I got you when you were saying about 24. So you do the 3, right? You do the 3, and they taslim out. You stand up for another one to make it even. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's if you intend on going.
That's if you intend on praying again later that evening.
Intending on praying later. Gotcha.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Can we move on? Fine. It says, وَيُقْرَأُ وَتَنَفَّلُ بَيْنَهُمَا. Here it says بَيْنَهُمَا, but I think it should be بَيْنَهَا. يُقْرَأُ وَتَنَفَّلُ بَيْنَهَا لَا تَعْقِيبُ بَعْدَهَا فِي الْجَمَاعَةِ. So sometimes in the text, you got like, if you read through another nuskha, another print, it might say something different. But here, it says, يُقْرَأُ وَتَنَفَّلُ بَيْنَهَا. Meaning, let's say for example, a person is praying Taraweeh. Remember we said Taraweeh, mathna, 2 raka'at, right? Right or wrong? So say between the 2 raka'at, a person, he doesn't stand up right away to pray, but he wants to stand up and perform a sunnah prayer between them, like a different prayer between them. This is something that is hated. Does that make sense? So you ever see people, or at least here in the U.S., when you pray 2 raka'at, then it's a break. 2 raka'at, then it's a break.
Okay.
During that break, they want to get up by themselves and pray some more in between that.
So the break is good, but not to get up and pray in between that.
I'm not even talking about the breaks. I'm just talking about praying in between the pause. That's a whole other issue.
Okay.
All right? Does that make sense? All right, so that's something that's hated to do. It says, وَلَا تَعْقِيبُ بَعْدَهَا فِي الْجَمَاعَةِ. However, if they were to pray again after that, like to tahajjud, after that in the congregation, then it's not hated. Once everything is over, if they wanted to pray again, then it's not hated. Well then, fine. Now we're going to talk about Sunnah Rawatib. A Sunnah Rawatib. Is anyone familiar with Sunnah Rawatib? Huh? Alright. A Sunnah Rawatib or Rawatib, there are Sunnah prayers that are attached to the obligatory prayers. Does that make sense?
So the Sunnah prayers attached.
Sunnah prayers that are attached to your obligatory prayers. What does that look like? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Are there Sunnah prayers attached to my obligatory prayers?
Yeah.
They are.
Attached, like meaning you go from the Sunnah straight into it, or it's
Meaning, if I pray this obligatory prayer, with this obligatory prayer for this Salat, there are Sunnah prayers associated with it.
So you talking
like Fajr.
Like Fajr, like Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. Are there other prayers affiliated or associated with those prayers? Yes. So now, right now we're going to talk about what they are. Okay? Like, it says, ثُمَّ السُّنَنُ الرَّاتِبَةِ رَكْعَتَانِ. It says, يَلِي وَتْرُ فِي الْفَضِيلَةِ وَالسُّنَنُ الرَّاتِبَةِ الَّتِي تُفْعَلُ مَعَ فَرَائِض وَهِيَ 10 رَكْعَاتٍ 12 رَكْعَةٍ وَهُوَ الصَّوَابُ. Some of them say that it is 10 raka'at, but some of the scholars say rather it is 12. Right? قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من صلى 12 ركعة في يوم وليلة بني له بهن بيت في الجنة. أخرجه مسلم. And this hadith is tremendous. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, whoever prays 12 raka'at every day and every night that are affiliated with their obligatory prayers, and with those raka'at that they pray, a house will be built for them in paradise. Well then, a house will be built for them in paradise based on them praying those sunnah prayers. So we're going to find out what those sunnah prayers are. It says, Al-Rak'atani qabla al-Dhuhr. So before Salat al-Dhuhr, now we're talking about the 10 ratiba, right? In the 10. Before those, so before Salat al-Dhuhr, a person can pray 2 rak'at before Salat al-Dhuhr, wa rak'atani ba'daha, and then 2 rak'ats after Salat al-Dhuhr. وَرَكْعَتَانِ بَعْدَ الْمَغْرِبِ, and pray 2 rak'at after Salat al-Maghrib. وَرَكْعَتَانِ بَعْدَ الْعِشَاءِ, and pray 2 rak'at after Isha. وَرَكْعَتَانِ قَبْلَ الْفَجْرِ وَهُمَا آخِدُهَا, and there are 2 rak'ats after Salat al-Isha. I'm sorry, there are 2 rak'at before Salat al-Fajr. Before Salat al-Fajr. Huh? 2 before Fajr. Not 2 after Fajr. Did I say 2 after Fajr? Oh. You do 2 after Fajr? There's no 2 after Fajr, Shah.
12 volunteer
Oh,
prayer.
go ahead, I'm listening. Say that again.
12 volunteer prayer. I do 2 before Fajr, 2 after Fajr, 2 before Dhuhr, 2 after Dhuhr. You don't do one at Isha.
After Asr.
You 2 after Maghrib and 2 after Isha. That's 12.
Right. So my question to you is, I'm not familiar with the Sunnah prayers after Fajr. In fact, after Salat al-Fajr is considered waqt al-nahi, meaning that's the prohibited times to pray. It's after Salat al-Fajr. The only time it becomes permissible to pray during a waqt al-nahi, during a waqt of prohibition, is if you miss the Salat in the appropriate time. So for example, let's say you woke up late for Fajr. You got up, the sun's rising. In this particular case, it's permissible to pray in the awqat al-nahi. It's permissible to pray in the time that is prohibited to pray in. Right? But as far as I know, unless you have some dalil, you have some evidence. Like, what do you have?
I have a book of prayer. I got 5 step 2 prayer.
Like, what does it say?
It says in there, I named it out. It's 2 before and 2 after. But I can bring it in next Monday and show it to you.
It's 2 before Fajr and 2 after Fajr?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, I'll show you.
Could it be that it mentions 2 after Fajr because maybe they missed it? Because there's clear text that mention the prohibition for praying after Salat al-Fajr.
So, is that what we're talking about? That's outside of, you missed the 2 before?
Yeah, so he's saying,
I have a book that says 5 step 2 prayer.
right,
And after it says they got steps in towards the prayer. And it says 2 sunnah prayer. Before Fajr.
I'm listening. Say that again.
It says 2 before Fajr.
2 before Fajr. Had them in a Sunnah. The 2 before Fajr is Sahih. That's known. Wait, what's the next one?
It's 2 after.
So, is you talking about the 2 that you perform for this slap?
No, you're talking about after.
So you 6 altogether?
Yeah.
6 right
Right, exactly. After you do the Fajr.
This is brother says, Alex.
Yes.
You think he's on the door prayer?
Nah, he's not talking about Duha. Are you talking about Duha? Are you talking about Duha? Are you talking about Salat al-Duha? You talking about right after Salat al-Fajr or after some time after Fajr?
Sometime after Fajr.
Ah, fuck this shit. It's a different. You got to see, then you got me scratching my head. Like, wait, I've never heard this. No. There's a difference. Salat al-Duha, we're going to talk about that. Maybe not tonight. We're going to have to finish next week. But Salat al-Duha is performed once the sun has already risen. From the sun already rise all the way up until right before Dhuhr. This is the time for Salat al-Duha. The best time to pray Salat al-Duha is closest to Salat al-Dhuhr, not immediately after Fajr. Right? That's number 1. Number 2, let's get back to this here because I want to talk about this and then we'll get back to that. So hold that.
Right. Just seeking clarity on when you said the prohibition of praying after Fajr. You said unless they missed it in its appropriate time.
Yes, unless you miss it in its appropriate time.
Prayer itself, though, not the 2 before it.
You can pray that later as well. So let me finish. So here's the thing. So it says, وَرَكَّعَتَيْنِ قَبْلَ الْفَجْرِ وَهُمَا آخِدُهَا. So the rak'atain, the 2 rak'ah before Salat al-Fajr are the strongest and the best of all of the sunnah prayers. وَمَنْ فَاتِهُ شَيْءٌ مِنْهَا سُنَّ لَهُ قَضَاؤُهُ. Whoever misses any of those sunnah rawatib, then they can make them up. then they can what? They can make them up. It says sunnah ghayru rawatib ashrun. And so there are sunnah that tied into that are more than, that are 20, that are actually more than the 10 that was mentioned. Arba'un qabla dhuhr. 4 raka'at before dhuhr and 4 raka'at after dhuhr. If a person is consistent with them, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect their face from the hellfire. Yes. In fact, if I believe correctly, the hadith says Allah will make the hellfire haram for their face. Haram for them. They pray 4 before dhuhr and 4 after dhuhr. Like, وَأَرْبَعٌ قَبْلَ الْعَصْرِ. And then a person can pray 4 raka'at before asr. This is in addition to what was already mentioned. وَأَرْبَعٌ بَعْدَ الْمَغْرِبِ. And a person can also pray 4 after Salat al-Maghrib. وَأَرْبَعٌ بَعْدَ الْإِشَاءِ غَيْرُ السُّنَنِ. And a person can also pray 4 after Isha. قال جمع يحافظ عليها وتباح ركعتين بعد أذان المغرب. And our person can also make 2 rak'ah after the adhan al-Maghrib. The point is this, Ikhwan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us many different ways to get close to Him.
I mean, before Maghrib.
Yeah, before Maghrib. No, after Maghrib. Meaning after the adhan of Maghrib. After the adhan of Maghrib. I should have said that. After the adhan of Maghrib.
Right, okay. I think that's
Yani the sunnah between the adhan and the iqamah for Salat al-Maghrib, you can also pray then. However, this isn't considered a rawatib. Now back to your issue. Back to your the thing that you mentioned. So we have 2 raka'at before Salat al-Fajr. After Salat al-Fajr, so next week we're going to talk about awqat al-nahi, the times of prohibition. There are 5 times that is not permissible for a person to pray in. One of those times is after Salat al-Fajr. After Salat al-Fajr, ila qayd al-rumh, until the sun has risen. Alright. During that time, let's say for example you woke up late. You didn't pray Fajr and the sun is rising. In this case, a brother asked me this a few weeks ago. If I woke up late, can I do, and the sun is rising, can I still pray Salat al-Fajr? He said, do I have to wait until the sun comes all the way up and then pray Salat al-Fajr? Or can I pray it while the sun is still rising? Does anyone know the answer to that?
No.
What is it? What do you do?
You wait till it's risen?
Nah. You pray immediately. Pray immediately. Why? Because Salat al-Fajr is a wajib salat. It's wajib. It's not a sunnah. This is something that you missed. So Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, if you forget or leave off salat, you salliha lamma takaraha. And Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, if you miss a salat, salliha, yani pray it as soon as you remember it. Well then, this here will supersede praying it in the times of prohibition. It doesn't matter. You have to pray that prayer. You don't wait until the sun comes up. No.
Years ago, if I woke up late for Fajr, and I don't know where I got it from, I would just pray the 2 rak'ahs of Fajr, and I watched a lecture on the Salat with Abu Masama, and he said, and that question came up, and he said, no matter what, pray the 2 sunnahs, because the hadith of Prophet also said that the 2 sunnahs before Fajr is greater than the.
No doubt.
So it was, I don't know where I got just, if you wake up late, just pray the 2 sunnahs before Fajr without praying, pray Fajr without praying the 2 sunnahs.
So we just mentioned that many of the ulama, they mentioned qada rak'atayn al-fajr ma fajr hina nama anha. In this hadith, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he made up the 2 fajr prayers with the sunnah with it when he overslept. So the Prophet, this is also something that is legislated from our religion. Man nama an al-witri aw nasiyahu falyusallihi idha asbaha aw dhakara. This hadith was reported by Imam At-Tirmidhi, and it says if a person sleeps and they miss their witr, you can make up your witr prayer. Right? If you sleep, you can make up the witr prayer, or you forget. فَلْيُصَلِّهِ إِذَا أَصْبَحَ. You pray when you wake up, oh, dhakara, oh, when you remember. So in this case, it is permissible to make up sunnah prayers. It is permissible to make up sunnah prayers, and we're going to stop with this, inshallah, to answer some questions, and then we'll pray. But next week, we're going to talk more about Salatul Layl. We're going to get into Salatul Layl because that's different than Taraweeh. And it's different than Witr. Salatul Layl is the night prayer. A person get up in the last third of the night. And then we're going to talk about the times of prohibition when a person is praying. Like, any questions about this so far?
Yeah. When you say if you sleep and then you wake up for the witr, it still has to be before Fajr, right?
That's the time. So let's say in general, yeah. But what if you usually make Salatul Witr? Some of the ulama will say even if you get up, you can still pray because it's something that you usually do. And some of them say la fatad mahallu. Some of them say that the time that you are supposed to pray, you missed that time.
Well, I'm talking about but it has to be before Fajr.
In general, it should be before Fajr. In general, it should be before Fajr. The question is, can you make it after Fajr or not? That's a whole different issue.
When making up the sunnah prayers, is there a time or when can you make those up?
In general, you should make them up when you remember them, that you missed it. Right? In general, you should make them up when you remember that you missed it.
So if you missed, let's say, the 2 before Fajr and the 4 after Dhuhr.
You missed them all at the same time?
No, like let's say you didn't remember. So let's say you missed the 2 before Fajr, and then you missed the 2 before Dhuhr. But then after you pray Dhuhr, you remember. You can pray them all together.
The hadith says, "Salli ala ma dhakaraha." You pray it when you remember it. So many of the ulama say that this applies to sunnah prayers as well. Nah. And Allah knows best.
Is it true that the sunnah prayer should be prayed in the house? From the hadith of Prophet saying that don't look out the graveyard instead of praying all the things.
Is it true? Meaning that
is it recommended?
Is it recommended?
Yes.
Allah. Allah. I mean, I've seen, I've read that, some pray their sunnah prayers in the masajid, and other than that, some pray them in their home. However, meaning your home, you still should pray in your home. You still, meaning like Salatul Layl and stuff like that. But you're talking about the rawatib, right? Praying your rawatib in the house. Are you supposed to? Allah knows best. I have to research Allah. I mean, I've read what you're talking about, but to say with certainty like this is Allah, man.
You were saying that Umar ibn al-Khattab, he gathered the Muslims. Who was the other Sahabi he gathered them around?
Ubay ibn Ka'b. He gathered the companions around Ubay ibn Ka'b, and Ubay ibn Ka'b led Taraweeh. And also to note that the Prophet ﷺ didn't come out to pray Taraweeh. In fact, he left it off because he was afraid that people would think that it was obligatory to pray Taraweeh. Any questions from the sisters?
Another question on Qunut.
Fine.
Are we saying Ameen with the Imam, or are we raising our hands? Like for the Qunut, or you could just...
Well, you should raise your hands.
Okay, we should raise our hands.
Right. The issue is, do you wipe your face or not? There's 2 different positions on that. Wiping the face or not in the Qunut. Wiping the face or not in the Qunut. There's 2 different positions on that. I don't have a position.
No, I'm saying majority of people will follow what the Imam represents everybody.
Right. Imam Ju'ila liyutamma bi, that the Imam was put to be followed. So in that case, inshallah khair. Any other questions, inshallah?
The 36, are they praying them in the Kaaba? The 36, where you say Imam Malik?
Say Imam Malik from Ahlul Medina. But there's some fiqh behind that. And they would say that during the time of the Salaf, when they were praying 23 rak'ats, right, they would also make tawaf. So from the understanding of the text was that Imam Malik and them in Medina, they wanted to catch up with the people in Mecca, so they would do more so they can get as much reward as the people in Mecca from that standpoint. We also know that the Salat in Mecca is 100,000 times better than anywhere else in the world. So, Allahu A'lam, but this, when you read through the books and it talks about that, they always compare, well, they did this in relationship to Mecca because they were at the Kaaba praying. So Allah knows best. You might want to ask someone that studies the school of Imam Malik to expound on that a little bit more. Any other questions? Fine, we done? Fine. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
You said...
The
2 rakats after Maghrib, right? But then you're going over to the 4 before Dhuhr, 4 after Dhuhr. Then you said the 2 after the Adhan of Maghrib, but you said it's not from the Rawatib?
I'm sorry. The adhan, the sunnah prayer between the adhan of Maghrib and Salatul Maghrib, that rak'atan there, that's not part of the ratib. Yeah, it's not part of the ratib. Thank you. Any other questions? We good? Collapse. Stop.
أذن يا شيخ.